Hello there, YouTube. We are back with the 5th installment of the Road to Nat series. I hope you all have been enjoying this one, as I know I've had a ton of fun making this series for you guys. Like I said earlier, it's definitely something that I hope to kind of move forward with, as we go into the next competitive season after this year's wraps up. So let me know if you have any feedback or suggestions down in the comment section down below. By the time this video goes live, we're exactly 1 week away from Bondi Card Fest down in Orlando, Florida. We're really excited to go down there and participate. I've been super busy getting some last minute testing and grinding in, so shout out to the homies Bryce, Josh, Nate. All y'all have been helping me kind of fine tune my list and get my deck to where it is today. So thank you guys for kind of staying up late and testing with me. I appreciate you all, and I'm excited to see how we all do down there at Nats. But as I said in the previous video, my final list is going to be under wraps for now until Nationals finishes up. I would like to keep any secret sauce out there under wraps until we can kind of get through the tournament itself. After the tournament is said and done, I will definitely be doing a quick recap video of what my matchups were, how I did, how I felt like certain matchups went and whatnot. So be on the lookout for that. But for now, the list will be sort of kept under wraps, like I said. Now, with that all being said, we do have, like I said, 1 week until Card Fest itself arrives, and we still have a lot of ground to cover in terms of decks to go over. We still have decks like Lord Knight, Imperial, LordKnightmon X, Fenrir Luga. We've got the Mirage builds out there too that we've yet to touch upon. So, full transparency, I don't think we're going to get through all of them by the time we get to Nats. So if you're looking for a particular one in general or want to see one specifically, let me know. I'll do my best to try to squeeze it in this next week and get that out there for you guys. But in the meantime, we're going to do the best with what we got and try to get through as many as we can. So, that being said, enough yapping for me. Let's get into the focus of today's video, which is going to be one of the premier decks that a lot of folks were looking forward to back at the release of Booster 2.0, and that is LordKnightmon. Alright guys, so as I said earlier, right, LordKnightmon was a deck that was heavily touted as one of the premier decks coming out of the 2.0 format, right? And for very good reason. It felt very much like a revamped and just more well-equipped version of the old BT5 LordKnightmon. And when you pair that with the new LordKnight X card, this duo was just really an exciting top end to plug into the tried and true Cerberusmon X engine that we're very familiar with in terms of when we had Leviamon running around, right? This engine packs both a wide board potential as well as a very aggressive combo package that utilized Purple's best tools at its disposal when it comes to trash manipulation, body recursion, as well as memory efficiency, right? And when you throw in other augmenting cards like the Bastemon from EX6, as well as the now restricted Anubismon from EX5, you have a deck that can really just wideboard and do really crazy shenanigans, and also implement a lot of control and sort of resource starvation in terms of your opponent, right? LordKnightmon X having pretty much all the keywords you could ask for in terms of collision, the Digivolve, putting out boards, alliance, right? It just does so much piercing, right? To top it all off. You have a lot of mechanics that LordKnight X can do, which makes it, like I said, a very enticing top end for this core engine that we haven't seen since the likes of Leviamon. Now, on that vein, we haven't seen it do a lot in terms of domination and topping of the meta, as we may have expected, mainly I feel due to a couple of reasons. First and foremost, as we mentioned Leviamon earlier, I think the deck still struggles from some of the issues that Leviamon faced, which essentially is just being reliant on such a big stack and appropriate trash setup to really pop off your combo plays. You do need some time to set up, and if you're not seeing the exact line of play, that setup may take an extra turn or two, which then puts you back in a meta that's very fast, right? On top of that, if you have decks that find a way to deal with your big body, there isn't really much in terms of protection that LordKnight X or LordKnight offers, which again kind of puts you back to square one again, right? So I think those are really kind of the two biggest things that we've seen LordKnight struggle with, and I think the meta has sort of adapted around to. I also would just argue that there haven't been a lot of tournaments in general since the release of 2.0. We've had a few like Ulti Cups, we've had a regional, and I think we've had the European stuff. But that being said, like not a big sample size for Lord Knight to really kind of sneak in and do some damage. So I'll be curious to see if we get a more more uptick in players ever since we got the release of the LM set, because we do get the addition of the scramble cards with that, which I do think helps Lord Knight in the sense of like consistency and being able to play out a body if they deal with your stack, so that you could just turbo up another line right off the gate. So I'll be curious to see if the addition of the scrambles changes some of the volume of Lord Knight players that we see, because I think it does help the deck out a lot. But yeah, you know, I think it is in an interesting spot, and I still think it's definitely one of the stronger decks of this format. So what we're going to do next is go over sort of the bread and butter combo of how Lord Knight likes to set up, and hopefully show you guys what it has the potential to do. Alrighty guys, so what I have here is a pretty, I think, standard setup for a lot of Lord Knight players. You really want to see the Goblymon in the back, mainly for the inheritable, right? Having the ability to gain a memory every time you pitch a card synergizes very well with what this deck wants to do. So I think definitely one of the ideal rookies to have in raising. And sometimes you really just need a training to pop off, right? So I think from a efficiency standpoint, what we're going to do is just illustrate it as best we can. Say our opponent starts us off at 2. What we can do here is we'll go ahead and raise the Gobly. And here you can go ahead and crack your training to go into a Dober X. What Dober X will allow you to do is draw 1 and pitch 1. So say you do that, you resolve your pitch. Here, I think it's typically not a bad idea to set up a Gazimon in trash. Mainly because Gazi is very good, not just in the mirror, but against a lot of decks that just like to manipulate memory, like mine, right? Where you just make their plays just that much more inefficient and force them to deal with it. So getting a Gazimon in trash early is never a bad call. And because you trash something from hand, you go ahead and gain a memory off a Gobly, and then you can draw off a Sunamon. And then the next part of the combo play is to go into your Protoform, tucking that underneath your stack to allow you to Evo for a reduced cost of 1 into Cerberus X, right? So this will cost 2 memory. Going into Cerberus X, again, allows you to draw 1 and pitch 1. Here, I don't think it's a bad idea to set up another very good card, which is Deltamon. On play, on Evo, and on deletion, you get to pitch a card from hand to pop one of your opponent's level 4 lower Digimon. So very good for dealing with opponent floodgates, such as Gazimon, as well as other just annoying rookies or level 4s that they have on field that can potentially do some damage to you, right? So having both of these guys set up in trash is always a good starting point. After that, Cerberus will let you play out a level 3, which will gain you a memory from Dober X's effect since you played something out via effect. And then you can kind of wrap up your turn here by going into a LordKnightmon for 3, which Lord Knight's effect lets you play out a Deltamon. You resolve Deltamon's effect, and you've effectively choked your opponent to 1 memory with now a level 6, 2 bodies out on board, and a lot of craziness to ensue next turn, right? So if your opponent can't deal with this board state, they've essentially said, okay, have at it, the world is your oyster, right? So they say they just pass turn over to giving you 1 memory. I think you can do a couple of things here. If you've got the right setup and the right resources ready to go, you could choose to just climb into another stack. That's not an unreasonable call, because having multiple like level 6s out on board, whether it's Lord Knight or a card like, for example, Anubis, can be really suffocating for your opponent. So that's one option that you can do and really just sort of like siege mentality that round, where you just build up an extremely wide board, have a lot of control aspects out on the field, and then go for game like the subsequent turn. Definitely a viable option. If you want to poke aggression or you find that opening to go for game ready to go, you can just go into a Lord Knight X here for 1. Lord Knight X has all the keywords that you could imagine, including Piercing, Collision, Alliance, as well as De-Digivolve. And on top of that, just to top it all off, it gets plus 3k DP because it has the right stack underneath. It has the Lord Knight underneath, right? So really good card. If you want to, again, push the aggression, what a lot of folks will do is just swing with Alliance, You can declare Deltamon. You get 20k now. And with Cerberus X's effect, you can go ahead and pop one of your own Digimon to restand. You do your 2 checks. You can swing, declare Alliance again, and you've done 4 checks right there and then, right? So if your opponent can't deal with this board state, you've lost. Like, you've won the game, right? And they have lost. So a lot of different things out there available for you guys. And like I said, a lot of different ways to approach it. But this is sort of like the bread and butter combo that you typically see, which is really, really good, right? You can really go fast into security and get them down to 1 or 0 in the blink of an eye, right? Which I think is really sort of like the theme of today's meta is speed and consistency. And this deck definitely does both of them very, very well. But anyhow, so let's kind of move on to the next part of the video where I'm going to be talking a little bit about my setup and how I like to go into the Lord Knight matchup. All right, so for me, going into the Lord Knight matchup, you know, like I said, it can be very, very scary with how fast and explosive they can be. But at the same time, I do feel like it's a very doable matchup for me. As we've seen, the core combo does involve a lot of drawing and cycling of cards, so having an established BT11 Mirage Gao is really, really good for this matchup. I also feel that my window to take advantage of the game is the first couple of turns, because more often than not, a Lord Knight player is going to stay in raising and play options like trainings and boosts to accumulate their resources and really get their hands set up so that they can have that explosive play, right? So you're not going to see like a very fast like turn 1 push up. More often than not, again, like the turn 1, turn 2 play is stay in the back, drop a training, drop a boost, pick up stuff, and wait for that right time to really pop off. So this buys me some time to hopefully establish a BT11 Mirage and put the tax dog out there so that their plays are just that less efficient and they have to kind of work a little harder to get to where they want to be. Pair that, you know, with the fact that most Lord Knight decks, in my opinion, don't run a memory tamer. If you can effectively choke them down to like 1 memory on a consistent basis, you're sitting in a pretty good spot, right? Like I said, you know, you may not be able to completely like take them out of the game, but you do make it that much more difficult for them to actually interact with your board state if you have, you know, good old Mirage sitting out on board, right? After I've established the Mirage, my next sort of hope is to use my sort of stack that gets played out via the Huangkun effect to build into a Hexablau. As we've seen, right, you know, a lot of what makes the engine in Lord Knight and the Cerberusmon engine tick is its inheritables. You know, being able to gain memory via trashing and being able to gain memory via playing out via effect really helps them string their combo plays along. So if I'm able to Hexablau and just take away some of that, I can really do some damage there too. And getting rid of their sources takes away their consistency and takes away their memory gain. And being able to stop any suspending effects can also be really nice, because not only does it prevent attacks, it also prevents alliance, because you can no longer suspend targets with a lower source than Hexablau to utilize alliance. So even if you do climb into another Lord Knight, if you have a Hexablau on field, you can't utilize the alliance effect to suspend something else, because Hexablau says, no, you can't suspend if you have fewer sources than me. So I think a really, really good kind of like a, I don't want to call it a floodgate card, but a good sort of like stall tactic with Hexablau, right? And on top of that too, if you have the Huangkun inheritable underneath, going into Huangkun itself lets you play out floodgate cards like Madoki, which again, stunt their memory gain ability and stunt their ability to prolong their plays. Madoki paired with a Mirage really makes it difficult for them to manipulate memory the way they want to, right? So being able to do that really takes them out of the game, and playing 4 of these Huangkuns, going into that, spitting out a Madoki, and then going into a top end like Hex is just really, really good, right? And I think makes it very, very difficult for Lord Knight players to kind of combat with what you want to do. And the last thing I'm going to point out about this sort of setup here, right, is that if you have a Hex and you're kind of all set up with your own wide board, you can easily go ahead, swing with the Hexablau stack, use the Huangkun effect to tuck the Madoki underneath to restand. Hopefully you're doing 4 checks jamming, and at that point, if you have the right setup, you could just easily OTK them too. So I really think this Huangkun comes up super clutch not just against Lord Knight, but I get a lot of matchups in general. So this being able to play out a Floodgate to go into another level 6 is a really, really good play, and I think needs to be utilized a lot against some of these decks like Lord Knight, for example, right? That being said, you do have to be a little bit careful because similar to when we talked about like red hybrid, purple hybrid, where you could do your opponent a favor by swinging a little too early and hitting resources out like trainings and boosts, which then allow them to, you know, accelerate their game plan a little bit more. So sometimes you do have to be a little careful with, you know, when you swing. That being said, you also don't want to wait too long. So like I said in previous videos, right, you do have to time your swings a little bit appropriately. And you have to kind of know when the right time to push aggression versus when the right time is to kind of sit on your powerful level 6s and just like wait that extra turn to really establish yourself, right? But yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, my approach to Lord Knight is Mirage, Hexablow, and try to Floodgate out with Madoki as best I can, because that really just stunts their game plan. And again, just try to keep choking them in terms of memory. You don't want to be giving them too much memory, because the minute you do, Lord Knight players can really capitalize on it. So the name of the game for me is Mirage and choke. You know, that's a very, very kind of standard rule of thumb that I will typically shoot for. Alrighty guys, so that'll wrap up today's video. A little bit of a shorter one, but hopefully something that you all were able to take something out of. As I said before, I will link some of the match play commentary that we have of Lord Knight down in the video description, so you can see some of these combos pop off in action and kind of get more visualization of how things like to be sequenced. And lastly, as the holiday season is in full swing, you know, we really do hope that every one of you, regardless of what you're celebrating or how you folks celebrate, we hope that you all are having a great time with friends, family, and loved one. It's a very important time, and, you know, we're definitely keeping all of you in our thoughts because we truly do appreciate every one of you. Speaking of appreciation, if you're down in Cardfest and want to say hi or just come meet us, definitely shout us out. You know, it makes our day being able to meet you guys, catch up with you all, and kind of have a little bit of banter amongst all of us. So it'll be great. You know, we're super excited to be down there. We're super excited to meet you guys. So please do shout us out. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in as always. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the content, and hopefully we catch you on that next video. Bye bye.